Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where we talk all things Commander. And this week, we have the big spaghetti monsters of the multiverse and Eldrazi tier lists. We're going to rank some of the most iconic Eldrazi from Magic the Gathering. Join with me is Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How you doing, Seth?
I'm doing super good. We got some new Eldrazi coming out in MH3. Good time to talk about the creature type.
Tomer, are you a colorless Eldrazi enjoyer?
I am. There's one Eldrazi commander that we're going to be discussing soon enough in the podcast that I am over the moon for, you could say. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about all of them.
Yeah, I don't even know what the story. I thought they were in the moon. Are they over the moon? Are they still in the moon? What happened?
Maybe I botched the reference. I don't know. Codfather, are you excited?
What's going on? I am the Codfather, Richard. I'm excited. There's some boomer powerhouses in here. I'm wondering if they're still playable. But there's some cool cards and some new cards that we're going to talk about. But before we get into that, today's show is brought to you by Ultimate Guard, premium protection for your trading cards. All the gaming accessories you see on Commander Clash are from Ultimate Guard. So check out ultimateguard.com if you want to use our deck boxes, sleeves, play mats, and all gaming accessories. And today's show is also brought to you by Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. Card Conduit lets you skip all the time, typing, and work associated with buy listing. Their curated service lets you send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 more, and you pay just a 5% service fee. You can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards and pay only 2%. You get a detailed report and fast payment once your order is processed. You get 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. So thank you for Card Conduit and Ultimate Guard for supporting today's show. Let's get into the Ultimate Guard comment of the week. So last week, we talked about mean cards. So naturally, the number one comment would be a mean card, right? From the Quarrelsome One. Seth and Richard not understanding the comment from last week, despite it being the crux of like 50% of their arguments against any given strategy / card of this podcast, is as close to peak comedy as we've ever gotten.
Yes.
Does it count if I don't understand this comment either?
Yes, I was going to say the same thing.
Click the comment. You can read. You go into elaboration.
What was the comment from the week before? What was the comment from last week?
Oh no.
It was something about like Richard and Seth saying like, oh, here's like one argument or something that like makes this like totally reasonable valid strategy invalid. And then I didn't know what they were referring to exactly, but I'm glad we got grouped together.
It was like here's like an easy here's a good card, and then the answer is like, well, if you play this card, then everybody's gonna kill you, and they're gonna ignore everything else on the table. And that was like the answer to everything. So yeah, that was the context. I agree with the commenter.
I still don't understand.
I still understand.
I don't know
if this is the real comment. I don't know how the YouTube editing works. We're gonna disqualify this one. All right. Back on topic. Spaghetti monsters. So Eldrazi, the big bad, formerly colorless monsters of the multiverse. We're gonna go with the OG original 3 first. So in case you don't know, Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, is banned in Commander. So Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn. I don't know if that gets a special spot here. So good, banned out of the format. We should probably revisit that because I don't even know that it'd be up here at the top of the list. But let's go with OG Kozilek. Before we get into this, we have a specialized spaghetti monster rating this week. So S is the best Eldrazi that ever was, just like top tier premium Eldrazi. A, solid Eldrazi options, playable. B, they're trying. It's like reasonable. And then C, I don't even think it counts as an Eldrazi. Okay, so that's our 4-tier system. And everyone's going to start in B, and we're going to promote them up the ranks, up the corporate chain here. So Kozilek, Butcher of Truth. Let me pull up the Oracle. 10 mana. Okay, so remember that there's colorless and generic mana, okay? Because in the middle of the Eldrazi, they've changed. So generic can be used, any amount of mana, any type of mana can be used to pay for it. Whereas colorless, the diamond, your land has to explicitly make colorless. So Kozilek is 10 generic. It's a 12/12. When you cast the spell, draw 4 cards. And then, of course, the signature the signature ability in Eldrazi is Annihilator. So when this creature attacks, defending player sacrifices 4 permanents. Annihilator 4 was Kozilek. And then when Kozilek is put into the graveyard from anywhere, the owner shuffles their graveyard into the library. Prevent reanimation strategies, or at least attempting to. So where do we put Kozilek?
Number 1. I know we're not ranking by numbers, but this is my number 1 most played Eldrazi. I love Kozilek. It draws cards. It's got a big body. It doesn't have the colorless mana restriction, which makes it easier for any deck to cast. You don't got to worry about having like a colorless mana rock or something. It's my favorite Eldrazi, I think. It does everything you want it to do. And that last ability, sometimes it's an upside because it keeps yourself from milling out. Sometimes you have decks where like that's why you play it, to shuffle your own library back in. So it's even better than just not reanimating it. So for me, this is S tier, like one of the best Eldrazi it's ever been made.
If this is like not decking yourself protection for yourself because you're drawing too many cards, I think you might have a problem, Seth. I think you might have a problem.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Well, so all the Eldrazi Titans have this ability, and I think it's very nice to have in your back pocket if you're in a meta that cares about milling. Like if your opponents are trying to deck you with mill strategies, then the Eldrazi Titans are the easiest way to kind of prevent that or make it much more difficult for that to happen. Because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to cast it. You don't have to do anything. It just, once it goes into the graveyard, you shuffle everything back up. I don't know. Like, do you guys actually play the Kozilek this much? I agree it's very good. It's a very good top end for like heavy ramp decks, but it is a cast trigger. You know, you have to cast it to get its major value out of there. Like, are you like cheating into play anyway with like sneak attacks and stuff like that just to use its Annihilator, or what makes it S for both of you?
You can't sneak okay, so you can technically sneak them in, but they have cast triggers. So if you want to draw the 4 cards, I give it an S because like it's literally the only one that's like actually playable in a non-dedicated Eldrazi deck. Well, not the only one, but like one of the few. Because it's 10 mana, draw 4. Now I remember back in the day when card draw was a premium, and in mono white, you would slap Kozilek in there and prayed you got the 10 mana to cast this to get 4 cards. It's still fairly respectable. I mean, it doesn't have indestructibility or anything like that. It like dies to like literally anything. But 10 mana draw 4. I mean, I feel this needs a resurgence, actually. Like, we used to play it a lot. It was probably wrong, but we were so desperate for card draw. But nowadays, we have so much mana. This thing is like free, right? Like, 10 mana is not impossible anymore. You regularly hit 10, 12, 15, 20 mana easily in Commander. So maybe Kozilek needs a resurgence, actually. Maybe we need to bring Kozilek back.
I'm actually way lower on this than you two. You put it as S. I only gave 1 S, by the way, because I was trying to adhere to our definitions. We're the best Eldrazi, and somehow you guys have multiple the best Eldrazi, so I don't even know if you read the assignment correctly. So I only have 1 of those. I gave it an A, but I'm actually borderline B. Because
really?
Back in the day, yes, I would run it in mono. I would run it in a bunch of decks because it is nice card draw. It's a nice top end. But now in the world of 2024, I feel like every deck has so many synergy options that really most decks I wouldn't consider running this. I would only run this in like maybe like a mono green deck that needs like top end big spells to cast. But even then, like usually there's better synergy options.
Yeah, but
like,
I mean, I agree with you. But if you're gonna put Kozilek at B, everyone's gonna be at C then, because even in a dedicated Eldrazi deck, this is one of your best cards. Well, right? Like a draw 4.
But
it's one of your best cards.
So I think all colors can draw cards very well these days. That's the problem. That's why I actually like the other Eldrazi Titans more, because even in a world where everybody's drawing cards, I think certain colors struggle to deal with certain permanents. Like, for example, if you're in red, how many ways are you going to be getting rid of enchantments? Even in 2024, you're still stuck with like Chaos Warp and like a handful of options. So I actually think that's more useful.
Spoilers. Let's move on to the next card. So 2 S's and an A. We're keeping Kozilek up here in S unless he gets bumped. Okay. Tomer was alluding to Ulamog. Ulamog, Ceaseless Hunger. This is V2 Ulamog. We'll get back to V1 Ulamog in a second here. When you cast this spell, so 10 mana, 10/10. When you cast the spell, exile 2 target permanents. Indestructible. When it attacks, defending player exiles the top 20 cards of their library. Also, the cost is all generic mana, so you can conceivably run it in a 5-color deck quite easily if you wanted. Second generation Ulamog.
New Ulamog.
Well, we jumped a generation.
We all settled on A for Ulamog. Like,
I got it at B, I think. No Annihilator. How are you
this one
even in
doesn't have
Eldrazi
Annihilate.
if you don't
wait.
annihilate anything? I'm not sure you're even in Eldrazi if you don't. Even
What?
Eldrazi Nulldrifter annihilates.
Only the original Eldrazi annihilate, and then Wizards decided to add new mechanics for the different generations.
I mean, really though, the problem I have with this card and why I have is a B. So yes, it is removal, but it's really expensive. I don't think the mill 20 mode is like that impactful. You're playing a 100-card singleton format. Your opponents have 300 cards split between their decks compared to like annihilate away a bunch of your permanents. I think it's pretty easy to be like, oh, I'll take a couple hits from an Ulamog and then someone will farewell or swords or like whatever to deal with it. So I just don't think it's like, it's fine, but it's trying. It's trying for me.
Highly disagree. First of all, if it's like, oh, it's so much mana, you literally you just said Kozilek's an S, and it's literally the exact same mana cost. So no. First of all,
but it draws cards.
Second of all, it's indestructible, so it's much harder to actually deal with. You have to have an exile effect or a sacrificer effect or like a bounce effect or something like that. And then it's not milling, it exiles. So it's 10 times better, because if you're milling, then you're actually helping a lot of decks with like graveyard strategies or whatever. This one is actually terrifying if you're a combo player. If you're looking for specific pieces to win the game, getting attacked by an Ulamog it can actually just ruin your chances of winning. So I think that's actually underrated. But yeah, I like this actually more than the original Kozilek. Because yeah.
I actually put this side by side. So I actually gave it an S. I was reading the wrong Ulamog for spoilers, but SBA is our ratings. So like, this is not you jam in every deck. It's still like kind of mediocre in a random deck, but I think it is one of the best Eldrazi. So exile 2 permanents, like Tomer said, certain colors can't get rid of permanents.
And it gets rid of lands
reliably.
Because Wizards of the Coast
10 mana
didn't say non-lane cards. Thank God. You could actually get rid of fields and stuff.
It gets rid of lands as well. And the mill 20 is super relevant, even if you're not a combo deck. Like, if you hit me and then you hit my coat of arms and overrun, my deck is done. Like, I literally cannot close out the game if you remove a couple of key pieces, especially if they can't be recurred. So the XL20 is actually quite scary, and it's indestructible. So it lives through mediocre board wipes. So I actually... This is one of the best Eldrazi, I think. Like, it's got to be up there.
Maybe it's better than a B, but I don't know. What if you compare it to original Ulamog? Because that's kind of where I come down. Like, if I'm choosing between these two, I think I just go with the original Ulamog over Ulamog, because I'd rather have the Annihilator than the mill.
Infinite Gyre. I don't even know how to say that word. It's an 11 generic mana 10/10. It's a Euro. Please, come on. When you cast the spell, destroy target permanent, indestructible, Annihilator 4, and then it has the shuffle clause. This is hot trash, actually. I'm going to put it down to B. How can you put this at the same as Ulamog?
I think it's
Destroys
worse,
is not exile. And Annihilator, like, I'm not scared of Annihilator 4 as much. Like,
Really?
especially, like, it used to be different. So today you have like everything like quadruples tokens, you have treasures, you have clues, you have junk. Like you can possibly survive a big Annihilator hit, but you need to be able to attack as well. And it only kills one thing on the way down, and it's a destroy, which like barely counts. Right? So it's okay, but I don't think it's anywhere close to Ulamog.
But then it kills 4 things when it attacks. Like you get 4 from the. Maybe I just overrated
God, it's
Annihilator
Crim here?
because
That's like an edict. It's 4 things you don't care about. That's 4 things you don't care about.
I know like getting annihilated is very scary, but it's board dependent. Sometimes if you're playing a token deck, for example, or you have a bunch of treasures or something like that, there are situations where the annihilator just isn't that scary. But if you don't have tokens, then obviously it could be absolutely backbreaking. So it really depends. It costs 1 more than the new Ulamog, though. That's a problem. It doesn't exile when it doesn't exile 2 things. It only destroys 1. You need to attack with it to really get its value, so you need an haste enabler to go with it. I like that it protects against mill, but I don't know. I like the new Ulamog more. I think they're both good, but like, I don't know. Yeah, it's an A. A is very good.
All right, I'll give them both an A. I can be talked into giving them both an A, but I still think Annihilator is really scary. Like, sure, sometimes you got a bunch of tokens and a bunch of treasures, but sometimes your Crim missing his land drops in a single swing just like takes you out of the game, and you don't have all those things on the battlefield. And you can always attack the person that is in that scenario if you want to be mean about it. It's not like you have to attack the token player or the dockside player that's got a million treasures. So I think it's still a pretty scary ability.
Because these don't have haste, the cute thing you can do is cast this, untap, Wrath of God, and then it's like quad kill lands. Right? Like that was a build your own Armageddon. But
are you still like, do you still guys
kind of cute?
Think that the Kozilek is still way above these two though? Because this is indestructible. This is like, really? Okay.
Because,
I don't really put
because
much weight
these cards
into
are so bad or so mediocre. I just take 4 other cards in my deck. I'll take 4 cards over Exile 2 permanents. If that's what you're asking me, I'm like, I'm gonna take 4 cards.
Dang.
But maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's greedy.
I could draw into removal to deal with those permanents.
Okay.
I could draw into the other. I could draw into an Ulamog 1 and Ulamog 2. You know. All right. Okay. Let's go with new Kozilek. The Great Distortion. So this was the introduction of the colorless mana symbol. So 2 colorless, 8 generic. So 10 total. 12/12. Legendary creature Eldrazi. When you cast the spell, if you have fewer than 7 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. Menace. Discard a card with mana value X. Counter target spell with mana value S. Or X. S is what Tomer gave it.
Yep.
Seth and I gave it A's.
So
where do we put it?
So, okay, my concern with this card is the colorless mana. I think that's a really, really big deal. That's something we haven't talked about yet, because we've talked about all the old ones that just need generic mana. Needing 2 honest-to-goodness colorless mana is actually really tough for a lot of decks. Think of a Phil deck, because Phil plays the kind of decks that easily get up to 10 mana and could easily be casting Eldrazi. If Phil wanted to, he could be casting the original Eldrazi all day, every day. I don't know if most of his decks could cast a Kozilek. You have to really intentionally build your mana base or play specific mana rocks to even be able to cast it. So for me, I think the new Kozilek Great Distortion, incredibly strong, right? It refills your hand like the old Kozilek, maybe even better in some scenarios. And then you can also use those cards to protect it or to disrupt your opponents by discarding them as counterspells. Really, really good. But I do think needing 2 actual colorless mana knocks it down a tier for me, just because a lot of decks I build don't necessarily have that unless I want to warp my mana base to make it work.
I heard you, Seth. I'm bumping it to A with Tomer because
yeah, I've seen your mana base.
Richard mana base. It's
I've
all
seen
ready
them.
to cast Kozilek all day.
Yeah, Richard.
One Aaron Archway, and you're good to go. 1 Scorched Ruin, and you're good to
Field
go.
of the
So
Dead.
actually, Field of the Dead, like, you know how Richard has trouble generating colored mana, well, that just means I can cast Kozilek super ease, right? So actually,
So
the biggest thing is I might actually have 20 cards in hand already, and this ability does nothing. But I guess countering everything for free is pretty good as a consolation prize. So I'm actually joining Tomer in the S up here.
So
Ooh, really?
So-
I'm sticking it A.
I do not agree with the Richard mana base, by the way. Like I'm happy that it can cast Kozilek very, very sufficiently. But the reason why I have it as an S, this is my favorite Eldrazi out of all of them on the list, my only S, and it's because it's my favorite one that's a commander. This is this is one of my favorite commanders of all time. It does literally everything that a colorless commander wants to be doing. The entire deck is basically you just run a whole bunch of ramp. You ramp out Kozilek, you immediately refill your hand because half your deck is just ramp source, it's just mana rocks and stuff. So you cast Kozilek, you immediately refill your hand, you have a 12/12 of Menace, so you have Pseudo Haste, you 2-tap any opponent as well. So if you have any extra sources of evasion, it's even better. 2-shot any opponent, and you have a full grip of cards now to just act as free counter spells if anybody's going to do anything to mess with your game plan. And like, yes, you won't have always the right card to pitch for the right spell, but oh man, I've played this deck so many times and I absolutely loved it. And also the great thing is that if Kozilek dies and you've already like pitched a bunch of spells and stuff, whatever, your deck is all just ramp cards. So you play a couple more ramp cards, you recast Kozilek, and you refill your hand, and you're going at it again. Like, I absolutely love it. Like, the only downside is, obviously, like a farewell, you just don't play the game anymore. But I love it. It's my favorite Eldrazi, uncontested.
That's your Hedron Archive deck, right, Tomer? The one that made you decide Hedron Archive was actually good?
I run Hedron Archive in this deck, unironically, and I played it on stream one time, and I actually drew the Hedron Archive, and I discarded it to Kozilek to counter a board wipe, and I think it was a board wipe, and it was the best Hedron Archive use of all time. Discarding it to Kozilek is its maximum potential.
All right. Okay, we'll keep it in low S over there.
Yeah.
We got a new challenger. Here. We're gonna go straight to the goodies. Emrakul 3.0. The World Anew. 12 generic mana. 12/12. When you cast this spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. Flying, protection from spells and from permanents that were cast this turn. When it leaves the battlefield, sacrifice all creatures you control. Madness, pay 6 colorless. 6 colorless. That is quite the madness cost there. Where do we put new Emrakul, boys?
I'm so torn. Go ahead, Domer.
I was gonna say, like, I put it as an A, but I think it's probably a B. No, I'll keep it as an A.
Oh, we're all having the same thought, huh?
12 minutes is a lot.
I was like, is that really a B? Like, I gotta give it an A just for the name recognition.
Like 12, it's a really powerful effect. It basically rafts one person's board, but you also get to use that person's board too. So it's really strong. 12 mana is a lot though, and being able to madness it for 6 mana is very tantalizing. But like, how many decks can actually pull that off? You need to have a deck built around it, but you can't have like Emrakul in your command zone because then you can't activate its madness cost, right? So it's not even like a build around in that sense. It's I don't know.
I think the madness, it's mostly for like other colorless decks. I think that's where you could really make it work if you're playing colorless. Outside of colorless, it seems like a big stretch that you're going to have 6 literal colorless mana available. So I don't think it's going to come up that much in modern outside or in Commander outside of colorless decks. The effect is strong though, right? Like you just target whoever has the biggest board, you steal all their creatures. Emrakul kind of only dies to wraths. Like protection from spells and permanents that were cast pretty much takes targeted removal off the table. So it's eventually going to get wrath, and that means the downside of it leaving the battlefield, you got to sack all your creatures, isn't really much of a downside because if it's leaving the battlefield, you probably got Wrathed anyway. So I feel like it is really strong, but it's also 12 mana and it still only does target a single person. It's not like you're seeing all the creatures, and unlike Insurrection, they don't get haste or anything. So it's not like you can yoink the creatures and just like beat people down. They do got to sit out for a turn. So I'm really bouncing back and forth between B and A on this one. I think it's good, but I don't think it's like busted or the strongest Eldrazi they printed.
I'm leaning towards a B. So the madness can be paid with Phyrexian Altar. Is it Phyrexian Altar? The one that sacks a creature and makes double colorless. So you have ways of
Ashnod's, yeah.
Oh, Ashnod's Altar. You have ways of getting colorless mana, even if your lands don't produce it. The biggest problem with this card is you got to sack your creatures too. Like the idea is like, oh, you steal someone's creatures, and if something goes wrong, you sack all their creatures, they don't get them back, right? But all your creatures go too.
Yeah.
Right? So the problem is if you play this and the board is super scary, people were already priming for a Wrath anyway. This gets swept up in the Wrath. If you take this and take someone's like mediocre board, you get hit with like an edict from Crim. It's goodbye. Right? You Wrath your own board in addition to that other person's board. So it's a little scary, and it just has flying, which is something, but it doesn't have trample.
Wait,
right? It doesn't have protection from
True.
colors.
Oh, it does have flying.
It does have flying.
Okay, that's good.
Right? And the protection for permanents that were cast this turn. So like they can't play a Planeswalker and get it, but they can untap and then use the Planeswalker, right?
No ambush vipers.
They could just path it. They could path it, and then you just lose all that.
Well, protection from spells.
It has protection from
Protection
spells.
Yeah.
So edicts and sweepers will deal with it. Edicts that like say like greatest power or greatest mana value or something like that, right?
Like it would be really cute if you had ways of bouncing it back to your hand, and then you could repeatedly cast it, bounce it back, recast it. But like, is it worth all that?
The whole board.
Yeah, but like,
board when you do that. So you're using that for a one-person Wrath, right?
Yeah, you're just like playing a control-y deck without creatures, and then you're using Emrakul to like you have Sanctum of Eternity, the land that lets you return a commander back to your hand. Like if you go build around, but even if it's a build around, it's very clunky. I don't know. You could just Insurrection and win.
Yeah.
All right.
Or just
where are we putting this?
Like,
where are we putting this?
I think it's a B.
B?
I want to put it at A just because it's an Emrakul, but I think playability wise, it probably is a B.
That hurts.
We need redemption for Emrakul. The Promised End. Emrakul 2.0 was the previous version better. 13 mana, generic mana, 13/13. It costs 1 less to cast for each card type amongst cards in your graveyard. When you cast Emrakul, gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. After that turn, that player takes an extra turn. Flying, trample, protection from instants.
I give it an A.
It's a Mindslaver. It's huge. It's a huge pseudo Mindslaver.
Well, they get a turn after that because it's fixed Mindslaver.
But
That's true, but hopefully you mess their board and hand up so much that maybe it doesn't really matter. Like, it does soften the blow a little bit, but still, like, if you Mindslaver properly, your opponent's not going to have a very good turn the turn after you just, like, played their turn badly. I don't play this card that often, but I kind of think I should play it more. The cost reduction on it actually is really easy to pull off. Like, as the game goes along, your graveyard's just gonna fill with card types, so a lot of times it ends up being like 8 mana, 9 mana, just naturally, not even building around it. And when you consider that a Mindslaver's 10 mana altogether to play and activate, and it doesn't come along with this huge flying, somewhat protected body, I kind of feel like this Emrakul, I should put it in my decks more often, I think, just to get Crim or Phil or whoever's ahead, like, just cast down the arch enemy and like mess him up.
I think out of all the Eldrazi Titans, this is one of the most playable in terms of it can see the most play in most decks, because like as Seth said, it's going to be the cheapest option for you. You're going to have like a fetch land, and that's going to count for the reduction. You might cast a removal spell, like a Source of Plowshares, or you crack a Sakura Tribe Elder, there's a creature, and then you're already casting it for like 9 mana very reasonably. And yeah, it's still a lot of mana for a lot of decks, but that's still more attainable than like 10 or 12. And then it's a big creature, and then you're going to be messing up an entire person's board. Like, you're going to be swinging out with all their creatures and probably into blockers that they don't want to be doing. If they're sandbagging any removal spell, you just use it however you want. Yeah, you could just absolutely wreck them. And if they're holding on a board wipe and they don't want to board wipe, like, you just attack with everything, deal damage to your mutual opponents, and then wipe them afterwards. Like, I don't really care so much that they take an extra turn afterwards. Their next turn is going to be so bad compared to what's going to be left over for them.
Didn't we just talk about how taking an opponent's turn is pretty mediocre?
I think on Clash we've taken someone else's turn like maybe 2 or 3 times, and every single time it was like not even worth like 3 mana's worth for some reason, right? Like, it's a lot of investment. Like, it is a Mindslaver. Do you play Mindslaver? Like, we only play that on like meme troll weeks, right? Like, it's not a power card because, like, if you take Phil's turn, all you do is just give him value, right? Like, everything he does is just draw him cards to further his engine, and like, it doesn't even help you.
But don't take Phil's turn.
What, like, a lot of times, like, there's nothing to do, right? And like, maybe you kill off some creatures with a chump attack, but like, is your goal really like take their turn, make them cast the Wrath, and like that was like what you wanted to accomplish? Like, that's like kind of like mediocre, right? And that's one of the best scenarios, right? So,
I can't imagine.
Like, the best is like they have a blue Sun Zenith or something, and you sack all their creatures to their Phyrexian altar or whatever, and then send it yourself. Like, I don't know. It's
I can count on my hand how many times somebody mindslavered me and they didn't get maximum values. One time I was playing Myra Attractions, and they basically did all the busy work of rolling for attractions and resolving triggers for me, and that was it.
That was the win on yourself.
And then, and then they killed my Myra. They attacked with my Myra, and it died. And I was like, okay, whatever. And they did nothing good. But every other time I got Mindslavered, it's like great value for them. Like, I'm usually playing an aggro.
But it's like you take your whole turn to remove like 2 creatures or 3 creatures or something, get a card out of their hand. But it's like was that worth it? Like,
you also have a 13/13 flying trampler on the bow.
I guess that's true.
That's the difference for me. Like, Mindslaver I don't really like in Commander because it does only target one person. It can like pseudo whiff sometimes, but this leaves behind a 13/13 flyer, so it leaves behind just like a massive body too. So I think the combination of the two is why I like it. And not that matters in our meta that much, but yes, if you're playing a normal meta, it does have protection from
Still dies to Wrath. Still dies to a Wrath.
And whatever. Then they have to Wrath though, because now there's a 13/13 flying trampler, and if they don't Wrath, they're gonna die.
Plus,
all right.
Like,
so
nothing feels
you
better.
guys are outvoting me to an A behind the Ulamogs or ahead of the Ulamogs?
I think behind the Ulamogs. Behind the Ulamogs, but in the A tier.
All right. Let's talk about some newcomers here. We got Zhuladok, Void Gorger. This is from the Commander Masters Eldrazi deck, I believe. It's a legendary. Everyone starts in B. So 5 and a colorless. So 6 mana, 7/4. Colorless spells you cast from your hand with mana value 7 or greater have Cascade. Double Cascade.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, this is cracked in any Eldrazi deck and like terrible elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's cracked as an Eldrazi commander. I don't even know if I really like it that much as a 99 card. Like, it's okay, but it's one of those cards you have to pay for a lot of mana, and then you have to untap with to cast something else for a lot of mana, and then you get a lot of value. Like, when you compare it to like Maelstrom Wander or something, which is what, 1 more mana, and you just like cast it and get all the cascades. The fact that you gotta play it and then wait another turn to cast something else to get the value makes me kind of skeptical of playing it in the 99, even in Eldrazi decks. But I do think it's like maybe the strongest Eldrazi commander. Like, if you just want to like fill your deck with a bunch of big Eldrazi, this card's absolutely wild is the commander of the deck when you always have access to it.
I've seen this card pop off. It's very similar to there's a Simic commander, Emoti, Celebrant, or Bounty, and it's also like if you cast a high cost spell, they have Cascade. And this one's even better because it's double Cascade, and I think it's actually really good in like an Eldrazi deck. But like when I upgraded this deck, I took out Zhuladok from the command zone and I put in Kozilek, which was already in the 99, the Great Distortion. Because that's what you want from an Eldrazi deck. The Eldrazi deck needs to run so much ramp. All your spells cost 7 mana. You know how much ramp you need to run to cast your 7 mana spells? It's insane. So you just want to refill your hand when you cast your commander. Ugh. So I took out Zhuladok, actually. I put him in the 99. I don't even like him as the command zone.
Card draw
Really?
over Cascade. I mean, look, here's the dream. You play Zhuladok, and then you play Emrakul the Promised End for like 6 mana or whatever. What's the cheapest you can actually get? Like maybe 5, maybe -5. So it'd be like 8 on the same turn, and then you Cascade into an Ulamog and a Kozilek, and you got the whole family there on one turn set. That only costs you.
Or you can hit a Mind Stone and a Hedron Archive. Like
that only costs 14 mana. Okay, but
you did it.
You got like 50 mana's worth. Oh, you could be like Phil and you Cascade like 2 counter spells off the top and call it a day.
Yeah.
Does this feel like an Eldrazi to you? So part of the reason I put it as a B instead of an A is like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like compared to the cards we've just been talking about, these like massive, huge, annihilate you, steal your turn effects. This is kind of like, meh, I Cascade a bit. I don't know. Like,
I mean, people like double Cascade. People like Maelstrom Wanderer. That's
true.
Fact.
Look,
but does it feel like an Eldrazi?
Seth is a DPS main, okay? Zhuladok is a support card, okay?
Yeah.
like it's here to help the big boys. It's like, is Eldrazi Mimic or Endless One Eldrazi? It's like the crux of the modern deck, and you need the support. You need the support so the big boys come in, right?
If it had Annihilator 1, Seth would be like, yes, exactly.
It's an Eldrazi now. That's really just stick an Eldrazi. Yeah, stick Annihilator on there. It's Eldrazi.
But then you say you don't like Annihilator because you feel bad, so you have to choose one, Seth.
All right, what's the conclusion here? A after Emrakul. We have 2
A at the
A's
end,
and a B.
end of A.
Yeah, at the
because
end.
it's such a good commander, and popular commander, I think A is fitting.
Not good because.
All right, we're gonna throw a curveball here. Did you know you can have the Eldrazi type on sorceries? We got All is Dust. All is Dust. Okay, 7 generic mana, tribal sorcery Eldrazi. Each player sacrifices all permanents that are 1 or more colors.
This is the one. This is the one. If we really went by our definition and could only pick a single Eldrazi to be the best Eldrazi ever, it's not even really an Eldrazi. It's a sorcery. But remember all the things we said about like Ulamog being able to answer things in colors that can't answer it. My red deck can't deal with enchantments, or my black deck can't deal with artifacts or whatever. This is the best solution to that, right? Like when I'm playing a color that isn't good at sweeping away those things, I think it's this and Ugin are the 2 cards that show up in my deck most to fill that role. So I think this card's, and it's also just great in colorless decks. Like if you're playing a bunch of colorless stuff, this turns into like a one-sided, not just a one-sided Plague Wind, it gets all the permanents off the battlefield of your opponents except their lands. So it's great in colorless decks, and it's great for decks that just struggle with removing certain permanents. So for me, this is the one I've played most out of all the cards on our list today. Like, and it's not even especially close.
I think it's really, really good. The major downside with this card, I think, is that it doesn't really deal with a lot of artifacts. Like there's a lot of artifacts that have colors in their thing, but if you want to get rid of like somebody's Sword of Feast and Famine and stuff like that, it won't touch that. It won't touch treasures as well. So I guess like if you're in like a mono black deck and you want to get rid of artifacts, this is kind of less.
That's true.
Less consistent. I personally, for budget reasons, I go for Oblivion Stone. It basically costs 1 more, but it will get rid of also the artifacts too. So if I'm like in mono black and I need something to get rid of that, I usually go for that instead. But this sacrifices, so it gets around like if something's indestructible, this gets around that. And then as I said, if you're in a colorless deck, if you're in an Eldrazi deck, this doesn't touch your board, and it's. In an Eldrazi deck, this is your best card in your entire deck because it doesn't touch your board and it ruins everybody else's board. And I think like that's going to be better than any Eldrazi Titan you could throw in there.
Did you just slander like every Eldrazi Titan like right
well,
there?
if I'm in an Eldrazi deck, If I'm in Eldrazi deck, the thing
Oh
that
my
like,
God.
one
best-
side
the-
of
the
that-
the best card in your deck is Farewell. I mean, I guess yes, but
But the farewell
yeah.
doesn't affect you. It's like a cyclonic farewell. Can you imagine?
I mean, technically true. Like, I just like Rampant Growth is the best card in your deck, but people don't normally view it like that. But this does work outside of Eldrazi, like Seth said. When you start with sweepers in literally any color but white, even like black and red, you're talking about Boom Pile, Oblivion Stone, All is Dust, Ugin. So like those are your only options. This gets around Indestructible, which is a big deal. So I really like it. And then of course in Eldrazi, this thing is absolutely cracked. It's a 7 mana one-sided board wipe.
Yep.
One-sided Farewell is kind of disgusting, right? Like okay. I got a combo for you though. Which one is it? What's the one that combos with sacrifice, guys?
It that betrays.
It that betrays.
Mayhem Devil.
It it that betrays. Okay, 12 mana, 11/11, Annihilator 2. Doesn't even have Indestructible, so its ability must be good, right? Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, put that card onto the battlefield under your control. What do we do with it that betrays?
It's this card I really love.
I know, because it has Annihilator, Seth.
Well, no, but it also has like a cool effect. Like Annihilator's, great, just like making your opponent sack stuff, but stealing the stuff that they sacrifice to Annihilator, that's way more fun. Plus, it's even better that it works with other sacrifice effects. That said, I still have it as a B because it's a card that I really don't play in many decks. Like, I think flavor-wise and like lore-wise, to me it feels like an epic Eldrazi, which is what I want. But it's something that I really don't often play unless I'm specifically trying to like annihilate people and steal their stuff or have some weird like sacrifice combo like Richard was talking about. When it works, it was pretty hilarious. Like this into All Is Dust, steal all everyone's stuff. It's like one of the coolest ways to win a game. So I think it's a B, but it's a really cool B.
I totally agree. I think like the effect is very powerful. It's a really cool card, but you need to be in a deck that makes your opponents sacrifice a lot, because outside of you making them sacrifice, they're going to be cracking fetch lands. You could steal fetch lands. That's cool. But outside of that, unless they're a sacrifice deck, you're not going to be getting that much passively. So I think if you're in a deck that has a lot of Annihilator or makes your opponents sacrifice very consistently, it becomes very good. But otherwise, it's 12 mana and doesn't have haste, doesn't really do anything the turn you cast it. Not good enough.
No, I mean, if they sacrifice things on the turn you cast it,
Sure.
it does something. This is what Commander should be. Fond memories of like cast It That Betrays. Hope you untap. Hit them. They sack literally 2 items. You get those 2 things, and you're like, yes, I get it.
You get their 2 worst
That's
things.
the power level we need to go back to. You got to play black, right? You got to play Edicts. You got to
Flashback
gotta get
Marauders.
people. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, once you're in black, like this is just like Turgrid that costs 2 times as much. So I think that's kind of like the issue, is it does look a little bad compared to Turgrid. I will also say it kind of suffers from the same thing y'all were bashing Annihilator for. It only works with non-tokens. And if the problem with Annihilator is everyone's going to be sacking treasures and things like that, this kind of gets the double whammy on that, because not only can they sack them to pay for the Annihilator, but then you don't get to steal them either, which is kind of a bummer.
All right.
It's cool though.
That's cool.
We'll keep it at B after Emrakul, out of respect. Okay. Oh, that's like the worst card we've talked about today. Then okay, Nulldrifter. Nulldrifter, coming in from Modern Horizons 3, is a 7 mana, 7 generic mana 4/4. When you cast this spell, draw 2 cards. Flying, Annihilator 1, evoke 2 and a blue. Can't even play to your Kozilek deck. Does this even count? Does this even count?
It has Annihilator. Of course it counts. It's S tier. S tier. It's a Nulldrifter with Annihilator. Why wouldn't I love this card? Seriously,
I want to put it down here.
Isn't this card pretty? Like, come on now. Nulldrifter's a commander staple, but now it's bigger and it's annihilating. I guess it doesn't work with Blink synergies, which is
Yeah.
kind of a bummer.
That's
But
the only reason you play Nulldrifter.
If Nulldrifter
With
was a
synergy.
cast trigger, would you play it in any deck?
all right. I mean, it's probably not an S tier, but it is a really cool design. And I
Yeah.
think it is a decent card. Like, you can still do the blink trick, even though you're not going to double draw with it, but you can like evoke it and ephemera it and get your Annihilator on the battlefield
God.
and like go to town, you know, annihilate
What
one.
the work you do
It's
for
a
Annihilator 1?
I will run it in exactly one deck, and that's like the Devoid Colorless Matters deck, because it's a 3-drop that triggers your Colorless Matters things while furthering your game plan. And then, yes, you could cast it later on. It's a 4/4 Annihilator 1. It's fine.
It
has
the
one
blue mana
purpose.
does really hurt it, doesn't it?
At least it counts as colorless.
It triggers as a 7-mana spell, so it triggers your Zhuladok. Like, it could literally have no text on it, and it would be decent because it triggers those things, right? There's a bunch of, like, lands and Eldrazi that say when you cast a spell with mana value 7 or more,
Yeah.
then you can consider this, but there's no way you play this in a random deck set as a 7-mana 4/4 flying draw 2, Annihilator 1.
And you can't run
Can
it
you-
in Zhuladok because it's like a blue
Yeah, that's what I was
color
gonna
identity.
Why does Devoid not matter to color identity? That doesn't, right?
It's
not
Devoid. Okay.
It's not Devoid.
But it has...
It doesn't say Devoid on it.
Yeah, it's not the void, but it has evoke
Oh, I
two
guess
and a
it's not.
blue, and the blue makes it a blue color.
Yeah.
Blue
Yeah.
color identity for commanders. So you can't
But,
run
So
it.
that
it's
makes
still
it
a
really hard
colorless
to play.
card.
It's
got-
still colorless, but not for colorless commander.
But not
decks.
for
Yeah.
commander.
You have to
So,
buy
very
the new
good
Eldrazi
job,
Devoid
Wizards, for confusing
Precon,
everyone.
which is 5-color Devoid Eldrazi, and then you could run in your Nulldrifter in there.
Yeah.
Buy our
Yeah.
main
I mean-
set, Commander players. Buy our main set.
Really, I would put it at a B, I think. I really like the card, but I think power level wise, there's not a whole lot of places that I would actually play it.
B.
But it does have
Disrespect
Annihilator,
to
so
it that
it can't be a
betrays.
C. It can't be a C.
He's,
Right,
yeah,
so where are you putting
Annihilator.
it? Is it B? Is it playable?
it's a C. I mean, it's playable, but like, yeah. Sorry, Seth. I'm so
Just
sorry.
because it has Annihilate, I'm gonna give you like a 20 mana 1/1 Annihilator. Set is like A.
S
He's
tier.
an Eldrazi.
I'll even give it Devoid for you, Seth. I'll even give it Devoid.
Oh, that brings it down. if
Devoid
it's got
and
Devoid.
Emerge. Oh, speaking of Emerge. Where's the new bad boy? Okay, this one. Herigast, Erupting Nullkite, 9 mana, 6/6, 9 generic. Emerge 6, red. So only in red Eldrazi deck can you run this. And remember, Emerge is when you cast this, you can sacrifice creatures, and their costs contribute to the cost of this thing. Came from Eldritch Moon. When you cast this spell, you may exile your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. Flying. Each creature spell you cast has Emerge. The Emerge cost is equal to its mana cost.
I love this. You know what? I'm raising the thing. It was a B. I'm putting it as an A. I actually love this card. I think it's underrated here. B's from the other May I pitch? So
Pitch.
as an Eldrazi, it's very awesome. Who doesn't like dragons and who doesn't like Eldrazi dragons? I rest my case. No, but really, the merge cost is actually really cool. It works really well in decks that are sneak attack decks or anything that puts something on the battlefield, but it's going to die eventually, like Encore as well. I think Encore works because it keeps the mana value. I'm not quite sure. But
I think so.
there's sneak attack, there's encore, there's a bunch of little tricks where you get to put a big thing onto the battlefield and for a little mana value cost, and then it's going to go away by itself. Even Unearth works like this too. I have, for example, a Purphos Bronze Blooded deck. It's a sneak attack dot deck. It's a dragon sneak attack dot deck. For 3 mana, I put any creature from my hands onto the battlefield. It has haste, and at end step, I have to sacrifice it. So Herigast is going to be absolutely fantastic here because the creature's going to die anyway. I paid 3 mana for it, and now I get to cast a full new card for the merge cost instead, so pay like 1 extra mana for that spell. It also draws cards too, which is cool. If you have an empty hand, and it works really well. Henzi is one of the most popular commanders of all time. Blitz, it's a blitz deck. It's just sneak attack, and Henzi's gonna love that too. It's really cool. Eldrazi Dragon.
Okay, so first off, no Annihilator. So that drops it down a tier for not having Annihilator. I think this is a card, it's different than a lot of the cards we've talked about. A lot of the Eldrazi, Kozilek, Ulamogs, they're cards you can just jam in the 99 and get value out of in a lot of different decks if you can cast them. To me, this feels very much like a build-around commander, and I think it's a really unique and cool build-around commander that's going to do some really unique things, but I don't know, like, can you just run this in a random deck or even like an Eldrazi deck? I don't really know if you can. Like, can you just play this card for value, Tomer? Or is this like, it's going to be my commander, I'm going to figure out a way to like chain together Eldrazi? The idea of like Ulamog, sack it, another Ulamog for free, sack it, cast a, whatever for free and just keep chaining. Like, it seems really cool, but that's stuff I want to do out of command zone. So for me, I bump it down a little bit because it doesn't have Annihilator, and more importantly, because I feel like it's really a commander card and not a 99 card.
I think it's better it's 99 because like
it has to be
Purpose
99.
and Henzi.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could work it out as a commander too, but Seth, it draws you cards. It could draw you 3 cards, Seth. 3.
You do have to exile your hand, so it's not pure card draw.
3 cards.
It's Tomer's case, right? Where you're sneak attacking, you're making like myriad tokens or something. Like, I don't know, like some weird stuff is going on. It feels very dragony and less Eldrazi-y. Like, that's the problem. But that's because it's new. Maybe we're not used. I mean, Emerge has been around for a while, but there was no iconic Emerge card in Commander, at least.
Not really,
but
no.
It's okay. It's okay.
Eldrazi dragon.
It's okay.
I feel like people are missing
I'll give
the
Tomer. I'll settle with a B.
Yeah,
I'll put it behind Emrakul out of respect.
I'll take a V. Fine.
Yeah, Emrakul's got to stay number 1 there.
Out of respect. How about Flayer of Loyalties? We got 8 colorless, so 10. It's a 10/10. When you cast a spell, gain control of target creature till end of turn. Untap that creature until end of turn. It has base power, toughness 10/10, gains trample, Annihilator 2, and haste. It itself as Annihilator 2 and trample. All right, it hit all the keywords, Seth. It has double Annihilator. It has 2x the Annihilator for you. It does something with the ETBs. Is this good?
So no, I don't think it's. I mean, it's okay. So the issue I have with this card is for 10 mana. We were just talking about Ulamogs, just like straight up getting rid of something. For 10 mana, this like threatens something, and it is nice that it gives that something a bunch of, keywords, and Annihilator, a big power boost. That's pretty cute. But I don't know, wouldn't you rather just straight up kill the thing rather than like, haha, I smacked you and annihilated you a bit, and now you get it back and you smack me with it and kill me or whatever? Like, wouldn't you rather just play an Ulamog and answer it forever if that's what you're worried about?
I think its function is different. This is not like a removal spell or anything. This is a I kill you now spell where you take a big threat, a big blocker. You take away the blocker and you swing it back at them as a 10/10. And then if you manage to give this haste, that's 20 power swinging at an opponent who now is missing one of their blockers. That's how I see this card. The thing that I don't like about it though is, it has trample. Never mind. I actually like it. You know what? It's an A. This is a finisher. This is not a let's deal with the board. This is let's deal with the player. That's the type of card it is. A.
You need real colorless mana. What deck are you gonna put it in? What deck where are you gonna run this card? In an Eldrazi deck.
A Hesian Archive deck.
But it's not even one of your good ones, right? It's like a mediocre.
All right, it's a B.
It's like an okay one.
I'm putting it back to the B. It's a B.
It's like
a
filler
finisher
Eldrazi.
for the Eldrazi. No, but it kills people, Seth. It has Annihilator.
But your opponent is playing a token deck, Tomer, and their biggest creature is a 1/1.
But they both have trample. The stolen creature has trample and it has trample.
Like you're assuming this thing has haste. Like why'd you give it haste for free? It's not two things coming in.
The threatened
it's only
creature,
the one creature you stole.
The creature's soul has haste, but like its damage potential, if you compare it to like a Kozilek or something, like if you give a Kozilek haste, that's 12 damage, and it also doesn't. Like most of these don't even have like good evasion. This one has trample at least, so it has the damage potential is 20, which I like. You just throw Greaves on it or whatever.
All right, we're gonna keep it at B. All right. How about Void Winnower? We've seen
Hey,
some
we
Void
saw this
Winnower
one
action on Clash. 9 generic mana, 11/9. Your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana costs, i.e. they can't even. Your opponents can't block with creatures with even converted mana costs.
This card is insanely frustrating to play against. Like I thought it was garbage.
Piece.
I thought it was absolute garbage, and then I just kept dying to this because like, oh, I can't block. That's my tokens no longer are chump blockers. Oh boy. And I try to remove it. It's like, oh, my 4-mana Wrath is like, I can't. It's great. I love this card.
I put it in a Commander Clash deck recently, and I just kind of had it in there as like, whatever. I was playing it cool, so I was cheating big things into play. So I was like, you know what? I might as well run it. It's a big thing. It's kind of cute. And I was shocked at how big of an impact it had on the game. Like,
right?
I was thinking it was going to be kind of like medium or like mediocre, but I got it down fairly early. And the ability to keep your opponent from blocking with even mana stuff dealt a ridiculous amount of damage, and it like locked a lot of wraths out of the board that people wanted to cast, but because they couldn't cast like a Wrath of God or a Supreme Verdict, or like there's a lot of even mana value spells that fare well. Our opponents couldn't deal with it. So yeah, I was shocked. I thought this card was bad, and then I got it on the battlefield. I was like, oh my god, this card's actually like kind of busted. So I put it up to an A. My initial reaction was B, but after playing with it recently, I think it's actually an A.
Did you win? Because you instantly annoy everybody. And good news is you have an 11/9 body.
You have an 11/9 body, so it's like a stack piece with a big body, but like instantly everyone gets agitated with you and starts sending all the aggro at you. And was it worth it? Did it further your game plan?
This
you
was
just
the
got an
top
11/9
comment.
body.
I think this is
This
what
was
the
the top
commenter was
comment.
criticizing
Yes.
us about,
Yes.
Richard. I think this is a...
Just saying.
Don't play good cards because we're gonna annoy our opponents.
Here's okay, here we go, commenters. I got the analogy for you, okay? It's like you walk into a convenience store and you pull out a Nerf gun that's painted black and point it at someone. And you're like, why would you do that? Right? You just like drew all this aggro, but you don't even have a real gun, right? Like you need to actually be able to back it up. It needs to win the game instantly, or like at least hard lock everyone out. But if I recall, so I remember the game we had a Void Winnower and a copy of a Void Winnower. We had 2 Void Winnowers. I don't remember who ended up winning, but like, did this further your game plan, or did it just piss everyone off and then everyone did weird things and then, like nothing came of it, right? Like,
But
So
can you say
it
that
does
about
piss
like
everyone off.
Can you say that about like the Ulamogs you gave an S, or like the Kozilek you gave an S too? Because like Kozilek, it draws you 4 cards, great. It has an annihilative force, so you're pissing people off. It doesn't have trample, it doesn't have like protection from anything. So you attack, you make somebody lose some things, you're enemy number 1, and you're just gonna die. Is that
there's
that
a big difference between I draw 4 cards versus you can't play half your spells and you can't block, and like 3 people got that against them, right?
Yeah,
It's the difference
like one
between
of them kills
like
faster.
you
You
draw
can't block,
like
you're dead.
4 cards. Yeah, but you gotta kill them. You gotta
This
actually
is
kill them.
11
But this
power.
doesn't have haste.
Yeah, but it's 11. It also is not a cast trigger too, so this is a much more reanimation friendly and also like sneak attack friendly too. So you don't have to worry about actually paying the 9 mana. You could actually sneak it in different ways, which I like a lot.
Although,
like this.
I don't know about sneak attack, just because like I kind of want to sit on the battlefield and annoy people. But yeah, like cheating on the battlefield, it does do that pretty well. I will say, like, I would be less scared of this or annoyed of this than a Annihilator Eldrazi personally. Like if we're gonna be judging it based on like how scary it is to the table, having an Annihilator Force sitting out there, that really scares me. And that's gonna make me want to try to kill you and take you out of the game. Because I'm gonna be thinking, wow, if they attack me, this is gonna go really bad. I just open the wade into these lands. I can't afford to have Kozilek eat them or whatever. Like that would be more of a concern. So I think if we're gonna rank the Annihilator Eldrazi like highly, this probably deserves it too, like based on the like how scary it is on the table theory at least.
I think all Eldrazi title, even an Eldrazi title on the battlefield, I'm freaking terrified. Like,
yeah,
just kill us.
Okay, where are we putting it?
This is an easy.
I will acknowledge.
Low A.
You guys
low A.
have brought a valid strategy. and I will
Bottom-
yield
bottom.
to it to acquiesce to you two.
Bottom of the A's. Bottom of the A's.
A bit of the A's. Okay, no, whatever. A.
All right. We stacks him now, boys. It's fine. It's 11 mana stacks piece with an 11-9 body.
Yes.
All right. We're gonna close things out with a question for you guys. I used to play this card a lot. I have forgotten about it. Is this still legit? And I'm gonna give you Oblivion Sower. Okay.
Hell yeah.
So Oblivion Sower, 6 mana, 6 generic mana, 5/8. When you cast this spell, target opponent exiles the top 4 cards of the library. You may put any number of land cards that player owns from exile onto the battlefield under your control. So before we got the myriad of colorless ramp options, before we learned about things like retrace image and whatnot, mitotic manipulation, this was like core for me. You play this, you get 1 land, you're happy. You get 2, you like Majuka Bog or something, like you're golden, right? But is this a legit ramp card still? Like, do we play this? Do you guys play this in like non-green decks ever? Have you ever played it?
I've
Where does this
always
go?
ran it in the same decks, and I still run it in the same decks. If you're running a deck that is like it exiles a bunch of stuff, like if you're doing mill stuff, or you run like Bajuka Bogs, like stuff that exiles graveyards, this card is super good. But you have to be in specific decks for it, right? If you're not actively exiling people's graveyards, if you're not exiling lands, then it's not very good. But there are certain decks where it becomes very powerful.
I'm kind of with Tomer on that. Like, I like this card quite a bit. I think the issue I have with the card is it's just like by itself, if you're not supporting it in any way, it's kind of whiffable. Like, if you're not having other ways to get cards into exile, like I've definitely cast it before and hit 0 lands. And I think if you actually math it out, like hypergeometric calculator, with someone playing like 38 lands, let's say, you're probably like going to get 2 lands about half the time. Is that really good enough? Like, let's say like 1 out of 4 times you're getting 1 land, half the time you're getting 2 lands. Sometimes you low roll and get 0 lands. Other time you high roll and get 3. Like, do you really want that for 6 mana? So for me, it's like what Tomer said. If I'm getting cards in my opponent's exile zone, this card's ridiculous because you can exile the graveyard and put like 10 lands into play and it's so good. But if I'm not doing that, I don't know. I'd rather just play a mana rock, I think. Like I do. Like that's what I do is just play mana rocks over this. So I don't really play it as just a generic ramp option. Do you play it?
I hear
Richard?
you. I hear you. But okay, so Seth's math is actually much worse than that, because if you take the average commander player, they're running like 30 lands. But also MDFCs, Lorien Revealed, like all these things don't help this count. So that number is actually pushed down. But Burnished Heart remains one of the most played cards ever. The rate is basically the same, right? Like, Burnished Heart is playable. Like, why don't we just
but what
play
if
Oblivion
Burnished Heart
Sower?
was like flip a coin and you get 2 lands, and if you lose the flip, you get 0 lands? Because that's kind of at least it does have a bigger body, but like the risk is kind of the issue.
But
I've just played so many Seder Wayfinders in my day and have them win.
You can get like 2 Vesuvas or a Vesuva Thespian Stage or something. Also, if the person dies, you lose your land,
which is actually a big problem.
Yeah.
So
A better question is it worth playing some exile effects to make this card good? Because cards like Relic of Progenitus, Bajuka Bog, those are already like fine cards anyway. Maybe it's worth adding a couple more of those in your deck so you can just like wipe the graveyards and then play this and get a ridiculous number of lands. That might actually be worth it. That might convince me to be responsible and play more graveyard hate in my decks if it's going to also be turning on my Oblivion Sower.
I mean,
like, the cost isn't that high.
I really liked it in mill decks. I had it in my Phoenix deck. It's a god that like you can tap to mill creatures equal to the toughness, and this has 8 toughness, which is very nice. But if you're milling somebody, you have to make sure that their graveyard is squeaky clean, or else you might, alley-oop the graveyard deck. So in there, it was fantastic. Anew, it's really good. I have a rules question. I'm not quite sure. But recently we had Gaunty, which is a theft commander. When you deal combat damage to a player with a creature, you get to exile the top card of the library face down. Can this work with face down exiled cards? No.
I think face down cards are special. What does Oblivion Sower say?
It doesn't say it doesn't mention the face.
Yeah, I don't know. Like if you didn't do it yourself, you don't know what that is. So how
But if
could
you did
target
it,
But if you did it yourself, can you do it?
I'm pretty sure you can't. Oh, actually, okay. So I just checked on Gatherer. Cards that are face down in exile have no characteristics. Such cards can't be put in the battlefield with Oblivion Sower. So yeah, face down cards it does not work with, unfortunately. Still though, I don't know. Maybe we should play this card more. Have you been playing it recently, Richard?
No,
I
because I
bring
forgot
it
about
too.
it. But now that I remember, because you have Scavenger, so I'm not wasting any card slots, right? So you can theoretically put like Relic of Progenitus, Scrabbling Claw, but that like takes card slots away. But you could play Bajuka Bog, Scavenger Grounds. There's a new one where the ETBs you can like exile 3 cards or something like that. Like there's a couple,
desert, I think, or cave.
And then here's the kicker: Farewell. No, but Farewells cleans up everything, and then you do this like perfect.
No, but it only gets lands, right?
Well, you can Farewell the graveyard. You can Farewell like exile the graveyard.
Yeah. So maybe this is playable.
Also, like
I mean, I pay infinite mana for land ramp.
Yeah.
Like to me, like Burnish Heart's a great deal. So I am very likely to try this again because I just forgot about it.
I think also if you're like just an incidental mill, like if you're Anawan, the rogue deck, whenever it deals damage with a rogue, you mill. So you can exile on top of that. Dothly Voidwalker happens to be a rogue, and if you have a Dothly Voidwalker on the battlefield, you're like, yes, keep that milling, you know.
I think black decks should definitely play Oblivion Sower. I think.
Yeah,
I think black decks have lots of ways to do this. Okay.
And plus, and if you're black, you can play Urborg. So if you get your opponent's fetch lands, you can tap them for mana, because that's one of the other downsides, right? If you hit like a Golgari fetch in your mono black deck, it doesn't do anything for you, but the Urborg gets around it. Okay, I think you've sold me on actually.
Usually a Yavimaya or Vorg on the battlefield.
I like it.
Okay. All right. I think we're out of time. Those are our Eldrazi.
A lot.
Poor Nulldrifter sitting down there all alone.
Oh, just wait. We're not even like part way. When this goes up, we're just starting Modern Horizons 3 spoilers. I bet you we get some more sweet Eldrazi in that set, because that's one of the big focuses. So I'm pretty sure some more cool Eldrazi are going to be on their way.
There's a commander precon, for those who don't know. There's a commander precon that's 5-color devoid Eldrazi. So not only is it going to be Eldrazi goodness, but it's going to be 5-color colorless goodness, which is cool. We haven't seen that before in a precon.
The void.
Wizards really stretching what it means to be colorless. Okay, so let us know, are there any sweet Eldrazi that we've missed, or we haven't talked about, like Rise of the Eldrazi, which is technically not an Eldrazi card, but you pretty much played in Eldrazi decks. Any other sweet synergies, or what do you think about the rankings of the big titans? Have we got our rankings right? And more importantly, should I run Oblivion Sower or not? I need to know if I will be laughed at in the comments if I run it. Let me know.
And what would you rank the original Emrakul? That would be spicy.
Ooh. S tier. If that, oh my god. Can you imagine that in fill decks that just ramp into it, get the extra turn, annihilate? Oh, it would be so good.
Unban Emrakul. How about that?
I'd actually
we might have a commander clash coming up where something like that might happen. Maybe someone will play Emrakul. But
Exciting.
Extra, I don't know. You get extra turns on the cheap in commander. Was it really worth all this hassle? But
Annihilator, Richard. Annihilator. It has Annihilator.
You're very obsessed about this Annihilator.
It's good.
You annihilate Phil, and he's like, okay, I sack 6 food. Go.
Leave Phil alone. He's done nothing wrong.
Just saying, the man carries like a stack of 60 artifact tokens in his wallet at all times.
Annihilator gets around fog in a way. You can prevent the damage, but you can't prevent the annihilation. Just saying. Hashtag fog meta is not real.
All right. So let us know in the comments, and we'll see you all back here next week.